Well, your undergrad years are your more like formative years, I guess. So
Right.
that might be why. But now focusing more on kind of like tips for those who are interested in applying for HBS and MBA programs, but focusing more only on HBS for now.
Yep.
The school is known for having a super broad essay prompt where they pretty much just ask you like, is there anything else that you want us to know about you? And I think it'd be helpful if you could kind of provide uh, not like as much detail as you're comfortable with in terms of like what you wrote about as like a tangible example, and then also if you have any essay tips for those who are applying.
Yeah. So you're right about the essay prompt just being totally broad. You can write about whatever. Um, I viewed that as a positive because it's a chance to just highlight yourself. And I would say the overarching recommendation or advice in approaching your essay is just to be genuine, and really just kind of be yourself and let your voice be heard, and let that person try to get to know you for who you are. And obviously, you want to highlight some things that are unique to you if they're there. But ultimately, like how genuine that voice is, I think, goes a long way. So you don't have to have solved, or found the cure for cancer or something like that. Not everyone has crazy stuff on their resume or super unique backgrounds that they can talk about, but to the extent you could be kind of genuine about who you are, I think it first shows like self awareness, um, and maturity. But also, like, you got to imagine if you're a resume or essay reader, you're going through like thousands of these things or hundreds of these things. And so when there is someone you feel like, oh, I'm kind of like, I can really understand this person and where they're coming from. And I kind of want to meet this person. Like, I think that's the response you kind of want to get. Um, I, I wrote about, I think the way I approached it was like, what's unique to me. And, I wasn't that unique. On paper, I am not, I'm basically your typical finance applicant, 2 years in banking, 2 years in private equity. Um, so, and I didn't have like some crazy kind of, I don't know, extracurricular activity that I could brag about or point to either. Um, so I do remember being like a little bit nervous about the fact that I wasn't that differentiated. So instead of stressing too much about it though, when I was going about my essay, I just kind of wrote about like how the experiences that I had growing up and my personal like family situation and such, um, molded me into who I am and why I was doing what I was doing. And so that's not that unique. Like everyone has that, right? Like everyone has had some sort of experience growing up that has made them who they are. But I just felt like I was kind of showing my true colors. And again, going back to my original advice of like just being yourself and being genuine, that's the approach that I took. And perhaps because I didn't have um, very, I don't know, unique things to highlight or talk about. I think if you did, I would probably approach the essay maybe a little bit differently and highlight that stuff because that does differentiate you.
And building off of that a little bit, you mentioned that you're have a kind of like more standard background of 2 years in banking, 2 years in private equity, and also for those who don't know about MBA applications or the whole application process, being an Asian American male also makes it tougher in some senses, kind of like also with undergrad. And so, you know, we just talked about the essay a little bit, and I think it'd be helpful to next go into just overall MBA application kind of tips, or when you're in the process of applying, because it's kind of like a few month journey or exercise that you go through. And I know it's probably been a while for you, but do you have any tips that you feel like have were really would be really helpful for those interested in MBA programs?
Um, yeah, so I think one thing to keep in mind is like there are different components of your application. Um, but so if so you should think about it holistically as you're applying. Like you should think to yourself, what do I want to get across about myself? and then use different aspects of the overall application to highlight those things. And I don't think you should be like super repetitive. You should try to use, maybe the essay to highlight kind of this aspect of yourself, maybe your background or something like that. And then your recommendations, maybe you wanted to highlight some other kind of focus. And you have two recommenders, so you can kind of ask them to write or focus on like slightly different things. Or if there's like an overarching strong like common denominator like theme that you want to highlight that is sprinkled across everything, like that's fine too, but you should just be aware of that and approach it holistically. And I think like your recommendations are actually very, very important. I would give whoever you're going to ask a lot of time um, before you submit. And the way I approach it, I don't know if this is the right way, but I already thought through in advance what I would like them to highlight, and I kind of like wrote about it a little bit to give them some ammunition to write about. Um, Not like I was writing their essay for them, obviously, or the letter, but to just give them things to write about on top of whatever they already had in mind. And depending on the person you ask, like they might be open to sharing their letter with you. Um, that way, you can actually really insert yourself into like what you really want to highlight about your candidacy. My recommenders, I didn't really do that, but I know a lot of people who had that opportunity to do that. But I guess my overall recommendation would just be to think about it holistically.
Got it. And for narrowing down a little bit into HBS, think there's a lot of people, or there's a lot of focus on leadership. Uh, to be honest, like I applied to HBS and I didn't get in, and so I did a lot of the research into the school, right? And
Yeah,
it screamed a lot to me when I'd go to like admissions events that were virtual, or through looking throughout the application, that leadership is such an important aspect of HBS. And for throughout the application process, do you feel like it's necessary to focus on showcasing kind of your leadership, or um, I guess like the other advice you gave is focus more on just kind of being yourself. But should you try to show like your leadership self, or
yeah,
I don't know?
that's a
Do you
good
have any tips
point.
on that?
Actually, I kind of forgot about that, but you're right. I mean, I remember thinking the same thing you were thinking, and I did try to emphasize the leadership aspect in my essay. I do remember that. So it's when given the opportunity, in your essay or other parts of your application, like if there are like two or three different things that you're like thinking about writing, and one has a stronger emphasis on leadership, I would probably be biased towards doing that. And one other advice that I got from someone was that for HBS essays, it's a little bit more okay to kind of showcase your stuff a little bit. Um, versus being like too humble about things. Um, so that was another kind of advice I got. But yeah, leadership definitely was highlighted, and I tried to emphasize it as much as I could. And it was tough because I was an associate and an analyst, like bottom of the food chain, um, and my formal leadership roles were limited, but I tried to show that off in other ways, like through my background, like little things like I was the older brother kind of thing, in different ways you can find to show that aspect or highlight it. You should do your best to show that.